By the time I was 15 years old, I was not only heavily addicted to pornography, but I was dangerously addicted to pornography. And I'm going to explain to you later what I mean by dangerously, because it did become dangerous. But I was not only addicted to pornography, but I didn't watch pornography for the purposes of masturbation. Yes, you heard me correctly. I did not watch pornography for the purposes of masturbation. All right, so that's pretty much your disclaimer. This episode will be very explicit and very personal and open as we talk about the dangers of pornography. There's going to be 5 purposes of this episode. 1, I'm going to share with you how I became addicted to pornography. 2, the reasons why I watched pornography, being that it wasn't for masturbation purposes, believe it or not. 3, the dangers of pornography. 4, how I overcame pornography, and ultimately why it is that you as well, if you're still addicted to pornography, why you should also overcome pornography as well. So stay tuned.
Oh yeah, Diddy got a podcast.
Man, welcome back to another episode of the Ruling Class Podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Diddy, back up in this bitch with another video. I know y'all, it's been about a week since I've dropped something. I've had a lot of things going on outside of the podcast world. So I appreciate y'all for being patient, and I hope y'all really take a liking to this video because I decided to get super personal for this video, all right? So yesterday I was talking with my girl, and she's really big on going to the gym. And I'm big on working out as well. It's just I'm more of a personal person, so I stay at home and work out. She loves going to the gym to work out, right? And we're talking, and I'm telling her that I compare going to the gym kind of like cuddling, or kind of like, I'm an artist. I paint, right? This is my painting back here. You all can't really see it. But I have paintings hanging around my house. You know, I was known for this in high school, coming out of high school. But, you know, it's a very personal thing. And she just couldn't quite understand it. I'm like, working out for me is just a very intimate thing. It's a very personal thing. It's like praying. You know, it's just some things you wouldn't want to do with a lot of people around. You know, and she just couldn't quite understand it because she was like, when she go to the gym, she assumes that most people, if not all people, go to the gym to work on themselves and mind their own business. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a very conscientious person. So I'm paying attention to everything around me. So it's hard for me to focus, and it's hard for me to do it knowing that I'm doing something so personal around a lot of people that I don't know, right? Maybe some of you out there can relate to that. Some of you probably can't. Anyways, this story relates to this video because I woke up this morning, I was thinking like, ooh, pornography. That's a great example. It's something, for one, I've never talked about on this channel that I think could benefit a lot of people, but especially a lot of young men out there who are going to go through this phase. Because I know a big part of my channel, I talk to men under the age of 35, right? So I was thinking, I was like, man, pornography is a great example because I've never masturbated before, right? And so when the people hear that, they think like, man, you're lying, bro, or bro, you're weird, or, you know, and this is no disrespect to the gay community, but something that I've been asked by a lot of people when I was in high school was, bro, are you gay? Or something like, well, not a lot of people, but I've been asked that before. Like, are you gay? Like, how do you never masturbate? Every man masturbates. One would argue that every woman masturbates as well. I'm not one of those people. I've never done it. I've never felt the urge to do it. So that takes me into my porn addiction. So when I was around 15 years old, I became addicted to pornography, and how I got into it was because, like most children, when you're coming up, you're not allowed to watch certain movies. You're not allowed to hear certain language in movies, you know, things of that sort. So when we watch a family movie or a movie as a family, when I was younger, when it came to a scene where it would be a sex scene or something, we were told to cover our ears, or we were told to cover our ears and our mouths. We was told to go out the room for that scene, and then we can come back in. Things like that. So it would only, especially as I started to go through puberty, it would only make me more interested in pornography. It would only make me more interested in sex, right? So, like, I would like to assume, like most people, especially young men who are starting to go through puberty, right? You become more intrigued and more interested about sex. You become aroused, and you're going through these hormonal changes and things of that sort. And to this day, my favorite movie of all time is this movie called Unfaithful by Diane Lane and Richard Gere. And it's this story essentially of this woman who was married for maybe like, 20, 25 years or something. She had like a 10-year-old son. And she ran into this guy downtown on her way to work. He accidentally knocked her over, and it led to her having an affair, infidelity. And I know I kind of feel bad for that being my favorite movie, but it wasn't my favorite movie essentially because she cheated on her husband, but because of the suspense of it all, how well written it was, and to be completely honest, it was because of the sex itself. Not because it was infidelity, but it was the sex itself and just the suspense that it created. So this kind of led to my addiction in porn. And I've never openly talked about this before, but if you know anything about Didi, I am super open, right? I'm very open about maybe 90% of my life, right? So anyway, so this kind of led to it started from there. And I kind of, like most people, I would assume, I started to sneak and watch porn, right? When I got my own cell phone and, I would secretly watch pornography. I would download videos and watch them. But see, what I didn't realize right away was I was aware that, people watch pornography to masturbate, right? But I thought that there were other people out there that also watch pornography the way that I watched it, which was I watched pornography to learn, right? If it wasn't about learning the positions, but it was also to learn how, human beings interact with one another during sex, right? It was also to learn the nuances, some of the things that are not said about sex. I watched it. I treated pornography like a movie, like a really good movie. I treated pornography like studying for an essay. Seriously, right? So I understand that I had a classmate, actually, I talked to one time about this when I was like in the 10th grade, 9th grade or something. And he was like, I do it to, to get off. I do it to masturbate, but I also do it to learn new positions. And I was like, oh, shoot, I never really thought about it like that. I watch it to learn just how to interact with a woman. You know what I'm saying? How to treat her, how to hold her, how to caress her, things of that sort. And he was like, you don't do it to masturbate though, right? And I was like, no, I've never done that. I've never felt the urge to do it. He was like, bro, I don't know anybody that is like that. And he said that when we were like 15. I'm 28 years old. And to this day, I've never met a man who watches porn for the same reason I watched it, right? So anyways, I became so heavily addicted to porn that I would watch porn every single day, sometimes throughout the entire day, every single day, right? But this is how bad it got. This is where it became dangerous. I told you all at the beginning that I will tell you how it became dangerous. But before I tell you how it became dangerous, once again, if you're enjoying this video, please like this video. I really want to share this story, and I want somebody to see this story, hear this story, and maybe to do something for them, because we have some things we're going to cover about pornography that a lot of people won't tell you about. All right. But anyway, so let's continue with the video. Please hit that like button. All right. So I personally became so addicted to porn that what I would start to do, I was living with my grandmother at one point in time in high school. And so we didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have internet. I didn't have access to the internet. So what I would do is I would walk around the neighborhood. Now, if you're talking about being vulnerable, this is the most vulnerable I feel like anybody could be, because a lot of you are going to hear this and think, bro, you are weird, or that's strange, bro. And I'm okay with that, because I didn't see it as weird. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't see it as weird, right? I saw myself going through puberty, and I was curious about a lot of things. So what I would do is I had friends or friends of my brothers that lived in like surrounding houses in the neighborhood, right? And I had access to their Wi-Fi. So I would find myself 12 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. One time, I remember this vividly. I went to a friend's house. He didn't know I was there, but I was in his backyard just go on this porn site, just downloading different videos, right? So what I would do, because again, remember, I treated pornography like I treated everything else. I treated it like movies, right? So what I would do is I would go and download, like, I'm not even exaggerating, like 25 videos. If my phone could hold that much memory, I would download like 25 different videos, go home, get some food, and get comfortable, and I would watch pornography like that, right? And I felt like, from a biblical perspective, from a believer, because I'm a believer in the God Almighty. From a believer standpoint, I felt like I wasn't doing as wrong because I wasn't masturbating. So what I realized about myself is that I could never find myself watching just plain porn. So porn that starts off with like maybe a woman touching herself or a man caressing a woman and they go straight into it. I could never do that. I always like porn that has story modes to them, right? Maybe picking up a hitchhiker, maybe, coming over and the nanny or the babysitter, things like that. And it has to be really well written for me to entertain, for it to stimulate my mind. So what I would find myself doing, it went from me going to friends' houses when they didn't know I was there, or going to their yard outside their house and download films, to literally watching pornography in the living room with family members. They wouldn't know that I would be watching it, but I would literally be watching it. No, I wouldn't be aroused. I wouldn't be erected or anything, because remember, that wasn't I would be turned on sometimes when I watched pornography, but I had the self-control where I wouldn't be that way in public. But I would find myself literally outside around friends, in the house, in the living room, around family members. I remember one time I was even with a group of friends playing 2K at my cousin's house. I'm in this small room. I'm ducked off in the corner with my phone where they couldn't see me, pretending like I'm on social media, but I was really watching pornography. It became that bad. I was that heavily addicted. And so this leads me to my first point. Like, I gave an example of, I would like story mode films. So I would watch like Picking Up a Hitchhiker, and then like them consensually agreeing to have sex. Well, that's not realistic, right? So what I didn't realize was happening to me was that pornography was warping my mind, right? So pornography, for a lot of you young men out there, or even older men out there who may not realize this, because it's subconscious, is that it gives you an unrealistic expectation on what sex is. So what I mean by that is, you watch enough pornography, you feel like you have to last as long as the people you see in porn films. You think that that's normal, right? It changes what you view as normal, right? It gives you unrealistic expectation of what women are. So you want the woman that has these exaggerated body parts that are not real, or maybe her body parts are real, but every woman isn't built that way, right? So now this is your expectation. This is your desire now, because this is what you've been watching for so long. This is what you expect sex to be like, but it's not always like that. You want to make sure that you please your woman, and I would advise any man out there who's in a marriage, of course, to please their woman, absolutely. But what happens when you watch pornography is that you feel like this unrealistic expectation that you see these porn stars doing in these videos, you feel like you have to do it the exact way that they do it every single time, and that's just not real. It's not accurate as to what it's not consistent with what happens in real life, right? But if you don't have a father figure in your life, such as myself, or a father, somebody who kind of teaches you those sorts of things, pornography is what you kind of adapt yourself to go towards, and that's what you think is normal. The next thing is stereotypes. Pornography, it encourages stereotypes. It makes people think that white girls are a particular way, all white women are a certain way, or all black men are a certain way, right? It enforces stereotypes like aggressiveness in sex, right? I'm not going to say all sex, because of course there's a niche, there's a pocket for whatever it is that person, whatever it is that you may be into, where you can find yourself comfortable watching whatever it is that you like, that you're into. But I am comfortable enough to say, and I'm sure a lot of other people out there are comfortable enough to say, that most pornography surrounds aggressiveness, right? It's aggressive, not realizing that a lot of women do not like that. A lot of men do not like that, right? But if you watch enough pornography, then this is what you think is normal. This is what you think you need to do to please a woman, coming from a heterosexual man's perspective. This is what you think, and it's just not realistic. And believe it or not, another thing that pornography does, being addicted to pornography does, it actually leads to less sex. Not more sex, less sex. And what do I mean by that? Because you have these unrealistic expectations about what women look like, what women should do during sex, because every woman don't have the same capabilities, don't have the same abilities, right? So you have these unrealistic expectations of what you want your woman to look like, what you want your woman to do, what you're supposed to do that you're probably not able to do. So you're holding yourself to these standards that you're not able to meet. So you're hard on yourself. So because of that, it leads to less sexual stimulation, right? You're not easily as turned on if these women aren't doing the things that you see in the pornography films, right? You find yourself not as turned on if you feel like you're not able to get what it is that you see in those films, whether that be the storyline, whether that be the type of woman, whether that be the own expectations that you have for yourself. It leads to you not even wanting to have sex because you can't find yourself aroused or turned on because of what being addicted to pornography has done to you. And that actually happened to me to an extent as well. And of course, I think this is the obvious one. You find yourself sexualizing women, right? So what pornography tends to do is that, yes, a lot of times people go to pornography just to get off. People go there just for pleasure purposes. But again, it's unconscious. It's not that you realize this. But what happens during pornography is that you don't only sexualize women or sexualize other human beings when you watch or become addicted to pornography, but it's so subconscious that typically you might think, well, I'm attracted to X, Y, and Z because this is just what I naturally grown to, be attracted to. But what you don't realize, you're not taking into account your environment, right? Your household, what you're taught, what you're not taught, what you see, what you hear, right? What it is that you see when you're watching pornography, right? That subconsciously impacts what it is that you're attracted to, whether you realize it or not. So when you find yourself looking at a woman only for sexual reasons, pornography has a huge role in that. Don't underestimate it. And all of this, I think, encompasses the mental health issues, right? This leads to mental health issues when it comes to pornography because, again, it impacts and it warps your mind on what it is. As a matter of fact, there's something I want you all to hear that I read one time. It says porn can change a consumer's brain. Did you know that thanks to a process called neuroplasticity, our brains are constantly changing? When we engage in an activity, particularly a pleasurable activity, and particularly if it involves repetition and intense focus like pornography, like sex, our brains alter themselves so that they'll be better and more efficient at doing that activity the next time. But this brain process can also be overwhelmed by what's referred to as supernormal stimulus, an exaggerated form of what's normal. Pornography, for example, can take our brain's natural stimuli, our desire for intimacy and connection, which is natural, and gives us more quantity, more exaggerated, and more quote-unquote supernormal versions of that desire. Through the neuroplastic process, porn can change what we perceive as normal, warp what we find exciting, and make real intimacy seem less interesting by comparison. And as long as you know, I have my master's degree. One of my degrees is in psychology. And from a psychological perspective, this makes perfect sense, right? By comparison, what you have grown accustomed to, when you get what's considered normal, you don't see it as normal. You think that's below normal or less than normal because what you're so accustomed to is what you've been seeing in pornography, and so many people in the porn industry has been doing it, but you don't understand how they're able to do it, how it impacts them, and you think that this is normal. Which leads me to my next point. A lot of times we support something until we understand or find out the backstory on something. So for example, there's a high suicide rate in the porn industry. A lot of people don't talk about that. A lot of women, like for example, in 2018, Candace Owens just interviewed this ex-porn star who has become a pastor somehow, but that's a story for a different day. She interviewed this woman who talked about how she knows several people from the porn industry, and it's public knowledge how there have been at one point there was like 5-6 months in a row where there was somebody dying in the porn industry taking their own life every single day. Every single month in the porn industry because of the impact.
So in 2018, there was like back-to-back suicides. I mean, it was every month. I think it was like 5 or 6 months in a row, somebody was dying. I have probably 15 friends that have died to either suicide or drug overdose. I just lost somebody that I was very close to last year. There's a very high death rate in the porn industry.
A lot of people don't talk about the amount of drug use, right? The amount of hard drug use that is used in the porn industry, especially by the women, about everybody, but especially by the women, in order to get themselves through a scene, in order to cope with life after they've done a scene, because they don't want to cope with what it is that they just engaged in, because they're hard on themselves and it impacts you. A lot of people underestimate the spiritual side of sex. Sex is spiritual. And when you're engaging with all these different people, it impacts you, right? Another thing about pornography that a lot of people don't talk about is that it fuels sex trafficking, right? A lot of people don't talk about that. There's a really thin line between sex trafficking and the porn industry, and a lot of people don't know that about it, right? So if you knew that about the porn industry and you understood that some of these people that you're watching may not be involved in consensual sex, would that encourage you to stop watching it? Would that encourage you to stop supporting it? Which leads me to my next point. The porn industry is notorious. They're known for profiting from scenes and things of that sort, sexual activity that's not consensual. You may watch something and think that it's consensual. You may watch something and think that it's role playing, but in all actuality, you may be witnessing something that's illegal, and you may not realize that, right? The next thing that it encourages from a believer's perspective, for those of you, I believe that all of us are believers, but we choose to suppress the truth and we choose to suppress God, biblically speaking, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, I believe from a believer's perspective that you should stop supporting pornography and stop watching pornography because it encourages and forces lust, right? It's not that you love a person when you watch pornography. You're going to create these fetishes for them, right? And that's probably the last point, the biggest point that I'll make about the porn industry is that it's a godless industry, right? There's nothing about God within that industry, but nobody wants to talk about that. A lot of those people, believe it or not, would even call themselves believers, right? A lot of those people are dealing with a lot of mental health issues. A lot of those people are dealing with stress, unbelievable amounts of stress, but people don't talk about it. People just go there, get what they want out of it, and keep it moving, but they don't understand what it's doing to the mind. They don't understand how it impacts how you see women, how you see men, how you see life, how you see relationships, everyday relationships, how you interact with women on a everyday basis in a sexual manner, right? It impacts you, right? And there's not a natural occurrence that happens when you become, addicted to pornography, because it's unhealthy, right? Any sort of addiction is unhealthy, and you have to understand it with pornography, but it's not typically talked about. So how I personally, overcame my addiction to pornography, because like I said, I was watching pornography in the living room with family members. They didn't know it, right? I would always sit off in the corner and point my phone in a way where no one can see. But I put headphones in, but that's just how addicted I became. I eventually came over it, and I haven't watched porn in, I don't know, a decade. It's been a really long time since I've watched pornography. And the reason for that is because I kind of found out how a lot of them are able to do some of the things that they're doing, how they're able to last so long, right? Some of the pills that they're taking, right? Some of the drugs that they're taking, able to get them through these scenes, how they don't even remember a lot of the scenes that they're doing, how unethical some of these scenes are, right? I just became very disgusted, right? And as a believer, I understood that it was a sin to engage in this sort of behavior. So I was able to, I think therapy will help, but I think also just looking within, right? I think just finding that being able to self-contain, and self-discipline yourself away from it. I think just cutting anything out cold turkey is not healthy, and it's not always easy. But I think when you understand and do your history on the porn industry, right, on what it does to the mind, right, the dark side of porn, I think you're able to get to it. And that's what I was able to do. Essentially, I just took a stand and I said, all right, Didi, at some point, bro, you're going to have to stop this. And by the time I graduated high school, well, in all honesty, I think about maybe 6 months to a year after I graduated high school, I was able to work on myself. I was able to look within and be honest with myself. And okay, so you're not watching it to get off. Why are you watching it? I'm watching it for pleasure purposes, but it's a different type of pleasure. So I had to kind of hone in on that, and I had to place my focus on something else. And that's what I ended up doing, right? So hey, y'all hop in the comment section. Y'all give me your thoughts. What do y'all think about, porn addiction? Have you ever been addicted to porn? Do you know someone that's addicted to porn? What are your thoughts on it? Y'all hop in the comment section and give me your thoughts on this video. Until next time, peace.
Oh yeah, Didi got a podcast.